Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Split Screen Podcast. I am your host, Chris Garcia, aka KCCHRISG. It's lovely to have you here with me. Whether it's day, evening, morning, nighttime, wherever it is, wherever you are, I hope you're having a wonderful time. Hope everything's good for you. Thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time listening to the Split Screen Podcast, or maybe you forgot what the Split Screen Podcast is all about, let me give you a little refresher. It's been a minute. We talk about anything gaming related, pop culture related even sometimes, and it's just casual, laid back, non-professional, just a dude expressing his thoughts into a microphone. Well, he's bored and alone at home. So, let's get into this episode. You might be asking, Chris, first off, where you been? Well, a lot has happened. I say that every time, I feel like. But not really. It's just been laziness on my part. But enough people in my personal life have told me you need to make more episodes. People in my personal life, some friends, some family, most importantly my mother, I love you, Mom, has been telling me you should make some more episodes. And I think my biggest fan, besides my mother, is my son, Jasper. So shout out to you, buddy. I love you. Always will. I hope you listen to this one. It'd be funny if you didn't. But Split Screen Podcast, we just like to have a good time, talk about stuff gaming related and pop culture related. So, whether you want to listen to it in the background or maybe you, for some reason, actually care about my thoughts, I don't know. I'm glad to have you here. So let's get into it. So I was going to do an episode following the Nintendo Direct, which was held on June 21st. It's available on YouTube if you have not seen it or if you have not watched it. Some spoilers. I won't go over everything. Originally, I wanted to cover what was announced in the Nintendo Direct this year because, first off, Xbox and PlayStation, they've already had their directs and their state of play, whatever, respectively. And then Nintendo did their direct. Of course, because E3 was canceled, I don't think it's ever going to come back. Maybe for 1 year just to test the waters on something. But I think those days are over. Oh, hey, what are you barking at? I have a buddy here with me. His name's Colton. It's my girlfriend's dog. Doing some dog sitting. So I apologize if you can hear something in the background every now and again. So, Colty, what are your thoughts on the Nintendo Direct this year? Okay. Thank you for your input. But so many people have given their thoughts, their opinions on the Nintendo Direct. It's so oversaturated with all of these podcasts, all of these websites, gaming media, you know what I'm trying to say, gaming journalists and journalism that have already covered this thing. And what could I possibly add? Not much. I'm sure I could add something if I really wanted to. But instead, let's focus on something that wasn't announced. And I think you know where this is going if you know me personally. For those of you who don't know me personally, yes, I like Nintendo. I love Nintendo, actually. I've been playing my Switch a lot more lately. But there's been something that I always go back to. And this is what today's show is going to be about. We're going to talk about my personal disappointment. Maybe some others are disappointed as well. And the fact that yet again, not even a single shred of evidence that a single Star Fox game is in development. Some of you might be asking, what the hell is a Star Fox and why do you want one? If you don't know what Star Fox is, one, I'm sorry for you, but two, do yourself a favor. Get your hands on an N64, whether you buy it, everyone knows at least one person that owns one, and get yourself a copy of Star Fox 64. You can probably find it pretty cheap, actually. The game is so huge. and play through that. Okay, actually, you don't even need an N64. But if you want that classic experience, get the Rumble Pack as well. It introduced the Rumble Pack to the N64, which brought vibrating sensations to controllers into the mainstream. So do yourself a favor. If you feel like playing the way God intended, the way Miyamoto intended, get it on the N64, get the Rumble Pack, play with that god-awful controller, and have a blast. But it's also available on the Nintendo Switch these days, on the Nintendo Online N64 expansion pack, I believe. Nintendo Online expansion pass, whatever it's called. You can also play it there if you're willing to slap down the money for that. I believe it's $50 or $60 for a year of online, plus you get some classic N64 games, and they're still adding games to that, by the way. But bottom line is, you need to play Star Fox in some shape or form, because Star Fox, I'd like to say, has a little something for everyone. However, reception on some games is better than others. Wow, voice crack. Others. So, and it does span a couple of different genres. The original Star Fox was released in I believe it was released on Super Nintendo in 1993, I believe, and that was actually made by Nintendo and Argonaut Software. For those of you who don't know, I'll just give you a brief history of all these games. And it was so huge because of the Super Effects chip. It introduced 3D polygons and things like that into the gaming universe, I guess. And so it was huge. It was an on-rails shooter. So simple to play, but groundbreaking at the time. And Star Fox 64, which was released in 1997 on the Nintendo 64, made by Nintendo as well, basically expanded on the original Star Fox, and along with the at the time canceled Star Fox 2, which was going to be released on the Super Nintendo as well, before, the N64 was right around the corner, so they just switched it to the 64. But anyway, my disappointment with Nintendo is that the last game we got in the Star Fox franchise was Star Fox Zero in 2016 on the Wii U. And it was basically a return to form, almost, to the series and the franchise's roots in terms of being an on-rail shooter. Because I said earlier that this franchise touches on a couple of different genres. The first two, being Star Fox and Star Fox 64, were both on-rail shooters. The second game, which was Star Fox Adventures, was basically it was an adventure game, but it was different because it was totally it was a total departure from what Star Fox 64 was. And if you don't know anything about the Star Fox history of things, I'm not going to get into who developed what, why, quotations from the developers, and why they made the decisions. But to give you just a brief summary of it, Star Fox Adventures was basically not even supposed to be a Star Fox game originally. It was supposed to be a separate game on the Nintendo 60, and there's a couple of titles like this. Star Fox 64, which was originally supposed to be on the Super Nintendo, and they switched it to the 64. Then, a game that Rare Entertainment was working on. For those of you who don't know, Rare made Banjo-Kazooie. They made Conquer, classics on the Super Nintendo, such as Donkey Kong Country. They made Diddy Kong Racing. They have a lot under their belt. A huge developer for Nintendo at the time before their acquisition by Microsoft. But anyway, they were working on a separate game for the Nintendo 64 called Dinosaur Planet, which was going to be an open world adventure game. Sort of open world, linear, but open for exploration, I guess is what I meant to is a better way to put it. That was going to be released on the N64. They showed it off to Miyamoto, and he said, "You know what? Some of these characters kind of look like Star Fox characters. Let's just switch it over to a Star Fox game." So they basically had to redesign it, restart too, because they said, let's put it on the GameCube. So another game that was canceled last minute and then moved to the next generation of consoles. But this time, it wasn't even supposed to be a Star Fox game. It was going to be in its own game. So this one, it was received well for the graphics, for the gameplay, for the, I guess for the world. I mean, I guess that counts as graphics, but it was a total departure because the on-rails missions were basically, you could tell they were basically forced into the game to say, well, yeah, it's a Star Fox game. One, because it has Fox as the main character, of course. But two, there's on-rails missions, which are like 30 seconds long, and they're essentially loading screens almost in this game as you traverse to different sections of Soria or Dinosaur Planet. They kept the name, and it was just totally different. Fox was on foot for 95% of this game, and then I remember beating it for the first time, and I was extremely disappointed. One, this is going to be spoiler alert. You spend this whole time building up for a 1v1 against General Scales, the main villain, just to have him cast to the side as a pawn and shoehorn Andross in just to solidify that this is indeed a Star Fox game. I don't know if that was the intention, but that's what we got. And that's the message that Nintendo slapped across the face to me. Because how are you going to market this game with General Scales and build up the anticipation just to have Andross come out of nowhere and have the same exact boss fight from Star Fox 64 all those years ago? It was just extremely disappointing. The gameplay was fine for what it was. You can argue that this isn't a Star Fox game, whatever. But to have an ending like that was so disappointing to me. Anyway, let me get off that for a second. So, that released in 2005 on the GameCube, and I don't know, it performed well. I have the numbers here. I'll go over them later, but all I can say is that this was a huge departure from the last two Star Fox games because it wasn't meant to be a Star Fox game. So, where do they go from here? You have two critically acclaimed games followed by an on-foot adventure game where the on-rails portions of the game are basically thrown in just because they kind of have to be in there in some capacity. The obligatory flight missions, if you will, they only threw them in there because what's Star Fox without flying in space? That's basically people's mindsets, and that was basically the developers' mindsets. So let's jump ahead to the sequel, which was Star Fox Assault. Did I say Star Fox Adventures was 2005? I meant 2002. Sorry if I said that. Star Fox Assault was released in 2005. And this time, and I think you're going to notice sort of a trend here for a minute, at least for 3 games in a row, Star Fox Assault was made by Namco this time. So we go from Nintendo for the first 2 Star Fox games to Rare Entertainment. Wow, Chris, come on, man. Rare Entertainment to Namco. And basically, they brought in I forgot the name. I should have looked up the name. They brought in a team that might have been Ace Squadron. Don't quote me on that. But they brought in a team that had experience making aerial combat games, because they wanted to put more emphasis on the flight missions in this game as opposed to adventures, which was on foot, right? So they said, let's take it back a little bit to the roots of what Star Fox is a little bit. We're going to do more on-rails missions, longer on-rails missions this time, more graphically impressive on-rails missions. We'll throw in some all-range mode this time because Star Fox Adventures didn't have that, but Star Fox 64 did. So we'll throw in those all-range missions yet again, and we're gonna keep the on-foot portions of it, but we're throwing away the I don't know how you would call it, the mystical aspects of adventures. We're going to throw that out the window. We're going back to all sci-fi, because for those of you who don't know, Star Fox 64 was, I'm not going to say it leaned really heavy into the sci-fi, but I mean, you're having dogfights in space with spaceships by anthropomorphized animals. Like there's some degree of sci-fi in there, and there are references in that game to various sci-fi related media like Star Fox, to Independence Day, to many others. I believe there might have been a Star Trek reference in there at some point. No, don't quote me on that either. But then Star Fox Adventures, since it wasn't even a Star Fox game to begin with, if you haven't gotten that by now, went away from the Star Fox, or went away from the sci-fi aspects of the franchise. And we had magical staffs, we had stones that held the planets together, we had dinosaurs roaming around. There was just no element of sci-fi whatsoever. We had these spirits that we had to collect, taken to palaces, things like that. Everything just felt really weird. You had the elements of a game that probably didn't have any sci-fi related elements whatsoever because it wasn't supposed to be what it was, to having to mix in sci-fi elements with mystical aspects of a totally separate game. So you have 2 different genres mixed in on Star Fox Adventures, and it was just really weird. It worked for what it was, but it was just weird. However, the Star Fox Adventure soundtrack, made by David Wise, I believe, who also did the Donkey Kong Country soundtracks, along with many, many other soundtracks. Banger soundtrack on Star Fox Adventures. If you have not listened to it, give it a listen. It is absolutely beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. Fantastic work. Anyway, Star Fox, my bad. Star Fox Assault went back to the sci-fi roots. We had aerial dogfights. We had on-rails missions. We had new spaceships, new planets to explore. We got to see more technology, more advanced enemies in terms of their technology. It was just a return to form, so to speak. However, while the on-rails portions of the game were great and felt really good, the controls were really smooth, the sound effects were okay, soundtrack was gorgeous. It was more orchestral versions of the Star Fox 64 soundtrack. It was fantastic. But the on-rails missions, or not, good lord, Chris, come on, shape up. The on foot missions is where the game kind of loses its appeal, because I feel like they wanted to make it more fast paced as opposed to adventures. And the gunplay was kind of weird. This is the first time, well, not the first time we've had guns in a Star Fox game, but there's a way wider selection of weaponry. There's a bigger arsenal, a bigger sandbox, if you will, of weapons to play with in this game. But the controllers for on foot missions is just weird. The C stick, I always hated it for looking around for FPSs and for third person shooters, which is what this game was when you're on foot. It was just weird. It was clunky. It just felt wrong. But so you had a trade-off. You had the flight missions were great. On-foot missions, not so much. Voice acting was not great at all. And the story was okay. And that's another thing that I will get into probably a little bit later. The story elements in Star Fox, they're not fleshed out they're not as fleshed out as they should be, as they could be. So we'll talk about that maybe a little bit more a little bit later. But let's fast forward a year. The Nintendo DS is out, and Star Fox Command is released. The first handheld game in the Star Fox franchise, made by Q'd Games, in cooperation with Nintendo, of course. And while the game was received pretty well for its gameplay, for some reason this one just didn't sit with me. It didn't sit very well with me at all. And maybe it's because 2006, I was only 10 years old. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But I didn't like how you controlled the R-Wings via the stylus. I just didn't like that. And I'm glad they didn't do that with the Star Fox 64 remake on the 3DS, because that would have been a deal breaker for me. I hated the stylus controls. And I know people liked it. People liked that aspect of the game. But for some reason, I didn't. However, the game was received well, just not by me. And in my opinion, they changed Star Fox, or not, good lord, they changed Fox too much in this game. They changed his appearance too much in this game. I didn't like what they did with his appearance, and that look has mostly stuck throughout later iterations of the game, of the games and Star Fox media, particularly in Smash Brothers. And I think they had a return to form for him too in Star Fox Zero. However, for a while after this game was released, because I had no problems with his appearance in Star Fox 64, I think he looked great in Assault, I think he looked great in Adventures. But then here comes Command, and they said, you know what, let's change his appearance. He needs a makeover. He needs an overhaul. And they made him look worse. And I hated it. I had a lot against this game. And this call me crazy, call me weird, but I did not like this game. I will say the one thing that I did like about it, though, is that each character had their own R-Wing, as opposed to all of them being the same and controlling the same, depending on who's flying the ship. Because you can play as more than just Fox this time around. You can pick a lot of characters in this game, and each one kind of has their different abilities in their ships that coincide with their character a little bit. But that's about it. That's all I could find that I liked. So fast forward again. That one released in 2005. I don't know if I said that already. I believe I did. But that one released in 2005. And another thing that I didn't like about this game is the fact that it had like... Oh, man. I have it in my notes here. It had 9 different endings. Let me say that again for you. Depending on the choices that you make in this game, and depending on the outcomes of your playthrough of the game, you could get one of 9 different endings. Some of them are fine. Some of them are just stupid. But there's no real canon ending. When asked about it, Dylan Cuthbert and, I'm sorry if I butcher this name, but Takaya Imamura, they said if the story were to continue from this game, it would have to be towards the middle of the game because there are so many different endings. But they consider this game sort of an alternate timeline. Give me a break. Come on. First off, who approved the idea of 9 different endings? Second off, who approved the endings themselves? Some of them are just trash. Let's just move on from this. So, Star Fox Zero released in 2016 on the Wii U. So keep in mind that Star Fox Command came out in 2006, and there were, there was the Star Fox 64 3D that came out to kind of tide us over in the meantime. But it was 10 years since a mainline Star Fox game was released. Think about that. 2006 to 2016. We had to wait for another entry in the Star Fox franchise. Star Fox Zero came out on the Wii U and basically served as a reboot of sorts. It had mostly the same story as Star Fox 64, which, if you count, this will be the 4th time that story has been told, because we had Star Fox 64, Star Fox 64 3D, and Star Fox Zero. So you have that going against it. And it was cool because it's all, at least for the most part, on rails. Of course, you have your all-range mode missions as well. And graphically, it was beautiful for the time, especially for a console like the Wii U. We'd never really seen a Star Fox game look quite this good. Star Fox 64 3D was gorgeous in its own way, especially for a handheld. But Star Fox Zero really pushed the limits of what the Star Fox franchise has seen before. So we revisit these planets that we're familiar with via the old games. We revisit the story a little bit, albeit with more cutscenes, some changes to levels to introduce different boss fights, and new gameplay mechanics, of course. We have more vehicles this time to use, in addition to the classic R-Wing and Landmaster. I think this game's downfall falls down to 2 different things. One, the god-awful control scheme. And you can argue with me all you want. But Chris, if you spend enough time on it, you'll get used to it. And it'll become second nature. And it'll be a lot more fun that way. But Chris, just give it time. You'll get accustomed to it, and you'll learn to appreciate it. Yeah, but here's the thing about that, listener or whoever you are. I shouldn't have to get used to something to enjoy the game. Especially the controls. Now, if there's some gameplay mechanics that you want to throw in that might take some getting used to, sure. But if you throw this control scheme on me and you have to use it, and I have to get used to it just to enjoy the game, then you lost me already. Because for those of you who don't know, I remember reading somewhere, I can't cite my sources, but the average human attention span, probably only in America, is about 5 seconds. You have to retain my attention. If you make a control scheme that's easy to play but hard to master, that's one thing. But if you make it to where it's difficult to start and difficult to master, then you're going to lose the casual audience, because people want to just pick up this thing and play and have fun, especially kids. You can't expect them to actually put in effort to master this just because you want to force a gimmick and force the user to use the screen on the Wii U to further the gameplay experience. I never agreed with it. If I were in charge, that idea would have been thrown out the window long before it even made it to the drawing board. So, forgive me if you like the control scheme, but to me, that's part of the reason why the game failed. You can't force that onto players, because while something like the N64 control scheme for Star Fox 64, that was pretty simple. Just like many other games where you pilot a ship, the controls transferred over very easily. But this game was just weird. It was too weird, too different. I didn't like it. Another problem that I think that this game went up against was the fact that it was going up against the life cycle of the console that it was being released for. The Wii U was nearing the end of its life cycle by the time this game came out. The console was a failure basically at launch. It was a failure after that, and it was a failure at the end of its life cycle. And it was too little too late for a Star Fox game to try and redeem it. People were already looking forward to the next console generation and what Nintendo had coming down the pipeline in the future after the Wii U's death. So Star Fox as a franchise has been dead for a while, and it's a shame that his relevance now is only because of Star Fox being included, or at least Fox and Falco being included in the Super Smash Bros. Franchise. So, where do we go from here? Well, I think first, let's just focus on what has worked in the past for this franchise, right? I mean, we're going on what? Let's see. Last game was released in 2016, and we're still waiting. I mean, are we going to wait for another 10-year anniversary or what? Because it's been too long. And this franchise needs to do something other than including Fox and Falco and company in Super Smash Bros. To stay relevant. I know Miyamoto was kind of joked if Star Fox Zero doesn't perform well that they won't make any more games, but part of me thinks that he was serious. Because, I mean, it's been dormant again. We had to wait 10 years And now, I mean, we're getting pretty dang close to 10 years again. I mean, we've got 3 years to go, but still, like, this is unacceptable for such a big IP in the stable of Nintendo franchises. So, I mean, and I have the sales numbers here. Star Fox on the Super Nintendo sold basically 3 million. Star Fox 64, 4 million. Star Fox Adventure, 0.82 million. Star Fox Assault, 1.08 million. Command, 0.53 million. And 0.44 million. I mean, the numbers dropped substantially after Assault. And you know what? The one game that sold over 1 million copies was a remake of 64 on a handheld. So, what does that tell you? I mean, people like... I mean, think about it. Look. Star Fox 64 3D sold over 1 million. Like, what does that tell you? How classic is the gameplay, the replayability of that game? People love that game still. I mean, they love the gameplay, they love the replayability. That's what keeps them coming back. So, if it were up to me, which, why would you listen to me? First off. Second off, it will never be up to me, but just hear me out here. Let's stop using Star Fox as a means to test new gameplay opportunities and new control scheme ideas. How about we treat this franchise, one of the founding fathers of Nintendo, if you will, with the respect, love, and dignity that it deserves. It deserves better than just being used as a guinea pig, as an experiment for weird and crazy ideas. It deserves a game with depth, replayability, better story, and just overall more clear direction for the franchise. Now, you might be asking, how can you innovate on something that its most popular attribute is being an on-rail shooter? And I don't have the answer to that. However, if people are still willing to buy Star Fox 64 over and over again, then you have a winning formula. We can't tell the same story again and again, however. We need something new. And I don't know what that should be. But one of the main things that we need to keep that Smash Brothers has done a very good job of doing. They always have that easy to pick up, hard to master gameplay style. Anybody can pick up a controller and play Star Fox 64. But to get the true ending on that game, you have to hit a certain amount of kills, go certain pathways, and it can be doggone difficult to get to that point. You have to put in some time to master those controls, to learn the techniques to get to those points. People like the easy to learn, hard to master gameplay because it's accessible to everyone for someone who just wants to turn their mind off, but it can also be a true test to a player that likes to be competitive with themselves and competitive with other players. Have the leaderboards, have the score bonuses, different routes to take across the Lilat system, longer on-rails levels, more challenges, more hidden secrets. Part of the fun for me, and what kept me coming back to Star Fox 64 in particular, was you have to reach a certain kill count on every planet to medal the planet, so to speak. And that meant that if you medaled it, you basically mastered that planet. And it was extremely difficult to medal every single planet in the game. And then once you did that, you unlocked a difficulty mode that was harder, and you could basically do it over again. So we need something to keep us engaged. We need the replayability. We need, I think, a better in-depth story, because these games have quote-unquote stories. The good guys go after the bad guys. However, I think there is room for more depth in terms of the characters, in terms of the worlds that they inhabit, and the history of the Lylat system as a whole. So that's what I would focus on if I were to make that next game in a Star Fox series. So if you've made it this far, let me know what you would do. How would you keep Star Fox relevant? Do you even know what Star Fox is? That's a really legitimate question. Do you even know what Star Fox is? Do you even care what Star Fox is? And more importantly, how would you save it? What would your pitch be to Miyamoto? If you had a one-on-one meeting with Miyamoto, what would you tell him? How would you try to sell Star Fox to him? I just know that we're tired of the gimmicks. We're tired of the experimentation with this franchise. It deserves better. We, the fans, deserve better. Speaking of which, Capcom, we deserve better because we need a new Power Stone game. But that's neither here nor there. And on a side note, I want to say this. Sega, we deserve better as Sonic fans. We need Sonic Adventure 3. I know that's probably never coming out, but still, Sonic Adventure 3. And we need Chow Gardens. Bring back the Chow. Hell, put it on a mobile app. I don't care. Let me make a Chow Garden on my phone. It would be no different than... No, it would be different, but it would be more in-depth version of what you already had on the Dreamcast. With the memory cards. You could take that and go, right? Take it on my phone. Put a Chow Garden app on mobile devices. I'm telling you, you'll make money, I promise. Anyway, I think I've gone on long enough. What are your thoughts? Do you want another Star Fox game? If so, what would you do with it? Let me know. You can let me know on the show's social media pages. If you want to follow, that would be cool. Twitter and Instagram are both at SplitScreenKC, and we're on Facebook, Split Screen Podcast. Give us a like, leave us a follow, leave some comments. Let me know your thoughts on the show. Let me know your answers to the questions that I've asked in this episode, and feel free to suggest more topics for me and maybe a special guest here in the near future. We'll see. What you want us to talk about next. What's on your mind? Let me know. If you want to follow me for some reason personally, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at KCCHRISG. That's at KCCHRISG. If you feel like following me, or if you want to leave me some hate mail, roast me, or do what you do. I love you no matter what. Anyway, that's it for this week's episode. Hopefully we can get some more episodes out in a timely manner. Who knows? But in the meantime, I hope you take care of yourself. Take care of everyone else. I hope you stay safe. Wash your hands, please. And I will see you in the next episode. Take care.